Welcome to Jewish Mysticism Lessons in Tanya, chapter 37. And this is part 3 of the power of action. And this is actually the final class of the power of action. And today's lesson, or today's chapter, is titled, Your Struggle is Worth It, part 3. This is one of the longest chapters of Tanya, chapter 37. And Rabbi Chaim Miller has divided it conveniently for us into 9 separate sections. Though there is, I will point out, a slight typo, that there are 2 section 5s. They're titled differently, but there are 2 section 5s, and therefore it only goes up till section 8. On the handout, I made sure to correct it. But in the book, when you look at section 5, you'll notice that there are 2 section 5s. Just literally just a technical error, it seems like. And in the Practical Tanya by Rabbi Chaim Miller, we are on page 408, chapter 37. And to date, really in the first 2, and the Alter Rebbe is going to continue that conversation here today, chapters, in the first 2 chapters of the power of action, the Alter Rebbe has been tackling why, to a certain degree, he's been comforting us. He's been trying to make us feel better that you won't be a tzaddik. In other words, right, why he's been trying to give us the understanding as to why we should not be striving to be a tzaddik. Mm-hmm. And to summarize, the Alter Rebbe says that we will not be a tzaddik, but we should not feel like that's a terrible thing in our lives. Why? And the best words that I can find to use for this are because that's not the purpose of our creation. The purpose of our creation is not for us to win the entire war. The purpose of, I know, mind blown, right? The purpose of our creation is not that we should get the whole job done. The purpose of our creation is not that we should be a tzaddik, that we should actually overcome our animal soul in its entirety, that we shouldn't even have a desire for bad. No. If that was the purpose of our creation, then God could have created us as angels, as we've said over and over again over the past couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Angels, robots, whatever you please. Right? In today's day and age, we like to talk about robots. AIs. Today I was on Facebook and Rabbi Chaim Mentz from Bel Air shared, you know how rabbis will sometimes do just like a question for like food for thought and try to get all their followers to chime in to see, you know, and everybody gives their opinion, and either it's a teaser for a class or it's just random. So he writes, we now have robots flipping our burgers, driving our cars, whatever, right? Giving us our money, whatever. And he goes through a whole bunch of them. And he says, so what will be the jobs in 2030 or whatever? I forgot exactly what. It was something along those lines. And it was supposed to be sort of food for thought. So I said, listen, Rabbi, to my knowledge, there has yet to be a robot who has given a Tanya class yet. So we have perfect job security. What are you worried about? So he says, so he responds, but you know Rabbi Mentz from Bel Air? He's never one-upped. So he says, and forget about saying a l'chaim? You've never seen a robot say l'chaim. So I told him, yes, they may be on the cusp of discovering artificial intelligence, but artificial farbrengens I don't think is ever coming. So we have perfect job security. Anyway, so if God would have wanted us to be robots, then he would have created us as robots. In other words, we were not created. The purpose of our creation is not to be a tzaddik. Right. The purpose of our creation is to be a Beinoni. That is the purpose of our creation. Why? Because what is being a Beinoni as the Alter Rebbe has defined it? Being a Beinoni as the Alter Rebbe has defined it is winning the battle. You have right now, in this moment, a choice to either do the right thing or do the wrong thing. To either, as the Alter Rebbe raised the stakes, affirm the non-duality of the world and the fact that the world is only godliness and nothing can be besides for God. You have the opportunity to affirm that reality, to prove that reality by saying, I know that my existence wants to do something else instead of following what Hashem wants, and you have the opportunity to choose to affirm that, or chas v'shalom, the opposite. Right? Mm-hmm. And when we choose to do the right thing, what we have done essentially is fulfill the purpose of our creation. Not just our creation as me or you or you, but the purpose of our creation, like the world as a whole. The reason why God, as we've said in air quotes the entire time, worked so hard to create such a physical world which seems like it's a separate entity from Him, was in order that we should affirm that that's not really true, that we should burst that bubble. So in this matter, the Alter Rebbe has been explaining to us the purpose of our creation is to be the best Beinoni we can be. Essentially fulfilling the ultimate purpose of making this world a home for godliness, and that's the main point we added last week, which is the home part, right? The point of making this world a home for God, making it a place where God feels welcome, etc. Now, last week we introduced this concept, which Irit says she has lots of questions on, which is that the ultimate realization of this is, the Alter Rebbe wrote many verses about this, I'll remind you of one, which is that when Moshiach comes, Bila hamavet lanetzach, death will be eradicated from the world forever. Right? Now that's not the definition of Mashiach, that's a symptom of Mashiach. Another symptom we have of Mashiach is, or maybe this one is better defined as a definition. The definition of what Mashiach is like the Rambam says, Maimonides says in his last line, literally his last line of the Mishnah Torah, the Sefer Yad Chazaka, he says, when Mashiach comes, the world will be filled with the knowledge of God, or more literally with the pursuit of the knowledge of God, as the water covers the sea. In other words, what will be the difference between this world now and the world when Mashiach comes? That godliness will be revealed. Now, I'm not talking to a random crowd here. You guys understand that. What does it mean when we say, meaning 36 chapters of Tanya have taught us anything, when we say this world will be busy with the knowledge of God, the knowledge of God will be revealed just as water covers the sea, the whole world will be godly. What does that mean? Essentially that means no death. That's a symptom of it. Because death is a product of the fact that Hashem needed to create a world in which it seems like there are other powers that have a governing force. The Kelipa or whatever words we've used for it over time. There will be no more war. These are actual prophecies that prophets have promised the Jewish people over the years of things that will happen when Mashiach will come.
But there's no death in
why will there be no more war? Why? Because war essentially is somebody saying, I disagree with you. Me disagreeing with you only happens when there's two egos.
It will be harmony.
Right? But that's war is escalated, right? But even arguments won't exist. Because we'll all be part of that same existence, that one harmonious existence. Harmony is a very good word to use. There won't be, for instance, another thing that we're told Mashiach will come. When we were children, they used to tell us that candy will grow on trees. In today's day, they tell us that money will grow on, meaning at this age, they tell us that money will grow on trees. But the concept, as it arises from the prophecy of our prophets, I don't remember if this one is Isaiah or Chizkiah or whichever one it is. So he says that when Mashiach will come, we won't have to work to support ourselves physically. In other words, our physical existence won't be
a burden.
Exactly, very good. Won't be a burden to our spiritual pursuits. We will be able to be busy the whole time. Why? Because the only reason why it is a burden now is in order to distract us from serving Hashem, in order to create that challenge. So when that bubble is burst, right? When the same bubble that we burst each time we do a mitzvah will be inherently burst when Mashiach comes. And that's the time of Mashiach. And in today's chapter, what the Alter Rebbe wants to begin.
Time of mana.
What was that?
It will be an eternal mana.
I don't know that there will be an eternal manna, or if there will just be, In-N-Out Burger will be kosher and they'll serve on the house. I don't know exactly how it will manifest itself. But that sort of idea, yes. Yeah. In other words, that we won't have to, 100%.
Everything will be given to us. We don't
provided
to do anything.
By the way, it's not about us.
We will be in the spiritual and not in the material.
Exactly. In other words,
we'll be free to just worship God. No burdens, no material burdens, like in the Mitzvah.
It won't even be us worshiping Hashem, right? We will be one with Hashem.
Okay, I need to stop you.
Go ahead.
Question. I love this concept.
I love it too.
But I'm thinking, looking at the world, at the consciousness of the world, at the hatred, at the divide, don't we need prerequisite for Mashiach to come?
What's the question? You think that we
Mashiach can come?
You think?
Like you see what's happening in Israel, what's happening here.
Okay, so there's two questions. There's two questions here. Number one is what's physically happening in the world. Most importantly, the things that we have no control over.
Individually.
Take a thing like cancer, for instance, right? Which I think is much more of a powerful proof to the contrary of Mashiach than Israel or anything else that's going on there. In other words, I think Hashem could figure out cancer
I'm
too.
talking about the divide between the people, the deep hate now between right and left
Right.
in Israel and here.
Right. Oh, okay. If you're talking strictly politically, or opinion-wise.
Politically, the level of hatred between like the religious and non-religious, between the right and the left, that is mind-boggling.
So there's two questions here. Okay, question number one is the facts on the ground. There are certain things that are going on now in the world.
It's like giving
to
us a
this-
gift when we don't behave.
Right. So again, there's two questions here. Number one is the facts on the ground. This is going on. Is this supposed to be happening before Moshiach? In other words, are things following the plan? In other words, right? Or do we still have a long way to go till that plan is followed? The answer to that, I will refer you to the end of Masechta Sanhedrin, Tractate Sanhedrin, in which it describes the time preceding Mashiach. And I hate to break it to you,
To
but
be even worse.
it looks worse than what it looks like now. Sanhedrin in the Gemara describes Mechamet Gog and Magog, that the whole world will be at war. Some people ascribe that might have been World War I, World War II, etc. Some people say it might even have been more recent wars.
We've gone through that.
Not necessarily.
It's in the future.
Not necessarily. Yeah, yes or no? We don't know. There's definitely going to be a huge war. The Gemara tells us that chutzpah yaski, there will be a level of chutzpah that had never existed previously in the world. That is certainly the case in today's day and age.
So then we are rewarded for that?
Not that then we are rewarded. Why this is the case is question number two. In other words, the question number two that I think you're asking is, why does it work that way? But more importantly, I think, even more, it seems to be bothering you even more than that, is so what is the process that's being followed? In other words, what is the plan that's being followed? If it's not that the whole world is slowly going to become more and more harmonious, right?
I don't see how the world is going to
Now,
be harmonious.
I should also point out that the physical harmony is a symptom, like we said. That's the last thing. So the main thing I think that we should be looking at, and this is going off on a tangent, I'm going to do it just briefly and then we'll close this and we could reopen this after the class, especially because we have a long class today. I take issue with the fact that you look immediately at the symptoms, especially because you've been to 36 classes of Tanya already. In other words, why is it that as soon as you see the problem, you say, well, look at all the symptoms that there are in the world, so how is it possible? Why don't we look at the root? What is the definition of Mashiach? The definition of Mashiach is not that there's not going to be any more war. The definition of Mashiach is not that there's not going to be any more hatred. Those are all symptoms that will happen as a result of the fact that the world will be a more godly place and the world will be more in tune with godliness. I think in that regard, I think we could say that in today's day and age, religion is probably at its best, at its biggest peak in history, in world history. Not just that, I think more than religion being at its peak, people in search of meaning, and people in search of peace, and people in search of the right thing is much more common in today's day and age. I'm not familiar with any other time in history when the richest people in the world said to themselves, you know what we would like to do with our money? We would like to pour it into the rest of the world that's not doing so well. And let's figure out, in other words, the goals that there are in today's day and age in the world. I'm not saying there's no negativity. I'm just, I guess, pointing out that in prior generations...
It's to both ways, it's
expanding.
It's expanding. Yeah, I get.
Okay.
I agree.
And perhaps that's the biggest proof that Moshiach is coming.
Yeah.
That's the main topic of conversation. I'm just suggesting something. I will also, and this is not something that I could offer right here, I know that there is a rabbi in near San Diego who has a nice presentation that he likes to do about things in the world that he feels, because this was an exercise that the Rebbe was always doing, which is pointing out things in the world which are signs that Mashiach is coming. And he likes to do that. He likes to collect signs. We're not talking about the fact that a bottle of water tipped over. We're talking about, big cosmic things that are happening in the world in different places that if you look at them from a certain perspective, you're like, oh, that's actually true. You know what? That actually is a sign that we're headed in a different direction than we were for thousands of years till now. I don't know what his current list is, but we can ask him. I can ask him for that presentation.
So there is a big awakening of spirituality.
Reuben Wolf also.
I don't. This is Rabbi Rubenfeld.
Yeah, Wolf in La Brea. He's also very
Reuben Wolf.
Reuben Wolf.
Yeah, but by him it's much more the bottles of water falling. It's much more, oh, this happened, that happened, da-da-da, whatever. He sees a little thing here. This guy is following patterns. Whether they're true or not is anybody's guess.
So the people that do not like God, they will change.
100%.
So everybody will be with God.
I think another thing is that's important. That's
different
important to
levels.
understand, by the way, and we're going to talk about this today. Is the Jewish role in all this? In other words, looking at the world as a whole is not a set. Meaning, when we look at non-Jews in the world, particularly evil non-Jews. In other words, I think part of what you're referring to is, for instance, let's say things that are going on in Saudi Arabia or in the Middle East, where people are just murdering each other, or terrorism, or things like that, right? That a lot of that could just be the world reacting. The world is going through a huge time.
A new law
where
that
we're
says
coming-
that you can kill baby after he was born. Out of the womb.
Right, in New York, you're saying.
In Northern Virginia.
Right.
I mean, it's mind-boggling.
100%. Okay, 1 second. But a lot of these things can be the world reacting. In other words, let's take a moment to zoom in for a second on the Jewish world. I think there's a lot of promise when you look at the Jewish world, particularly as per history and certainly as per recent history. There's definitely a huge awakening among the Jewish world. I like to attribute a lot of it to Chabad, but you're welcome to do whatever you,
I think so.
to attribute it to whoever you want. There's definitely a huge awakening. I don't know that there was ever a period in history when there was a Baal Tshuva movement, not even one the same size of today, but a movement of people that were trying to come closer to Hashem. It was always just people were doing their thing, and Chassidus, what Chassidus has done to the world, the fact that people are exploring. Anyway, but let's close that parenthesis for now.
No. Okay, you convinced me.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay, well then we're
Maybe
good.
I just add an addendum there.
And with this we conclude. Yes.
At the time of Moses in Egypt, the Jews went through a great deal of turmoil.
Uh-huh.
The plagues were just phenomenal. It wasn't just the Egyptians who were going through the plagues. I mean, there was
No.
a threat to the very life of all Jews.
It was just the Egyptians that were going through the plagues. I think what you're referring to is that when that during the redemption from the exile of Egypt, in other words, during the Exodus, you are correct in saying that the Jews were at one of their lowest points and they went upwards.
Yes.
And that is true. And which is why the verse says, excuse me, the prophecy says with regards to the times of Moshiach, that as the days of when you left Egypt, so too will I show you miracles when Moshiach comes. They're comparable, the two of them. Those two elements of history. The major difference between the two of them is usually given that when the Jews left Egypt, it had to be from above. They were not capable of redeeming themselves. They were not capable of leaving Egypt on their own. They were not capable of becoming better people on their own. They needed Hashem to make that beginning by pulling them out of Egypt and bringing them to Mount Sinai. And then from there on, they did have their own service. Whereas when Moshiach will come, it's directly dependent on what we do in today's day and age. Okay, so with this we'll close that conversation, but it's only temporarily that we're closing it. I'll tell you why. Because essentially you guys have touched on a lot of things that we're going to talk about in today's lesson. A lot of those things. We jumped ahead about some points, and when we get to them, I'll just breeze through them. But a lot of those points I'm going to discuss. In particular, it's the process. We're going to touch on the process. What is the process that we're following now in order to bring Mashiach? And maybe, perhaps, once we're done that, it'll be a little more understood to most people in this room why Chabadniks are so obsessed with Mashiach. You cannot put on tefillin with a Chabadnik without him saying, we want Mashiach now at the end of it. You cannot listen to a Chabadnik shir a Torah thought without him saying, may Mashiach come speedily in our days. In other words, everything that a Chabadnik does, right now we're giving a Tanya class, the point of the Tanya class is in order for Mashiach to come. We're always doing this, we're always doing things in order for Mashiach to come. And that picture is going to become clear today. That's one of the things that's going to become clear today. So the Alter Rebbe begins by making a premise, by stating a premise. He says, everything that's going to happen when Mashiach comes is directly dependent on what we do here in today's day and age. And he brings slight proofs for this. But most importantly, he brings from the Mishnah in Masechta Avot, in Ethics of Our Fathers, where it says, Schar mitzvah mitzvah. The reward for a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. Now the literal translation of this is very simple. He brings it down over here. Rabbi Chaim Miller brings it down. Where is it? You see it?
Bottom of 409.
Yeah, bottom of 409. The plain meaning of the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah, which Rabbeinu Ovadia Bar Tenura, who is one of the most foremost commentators on the Mishnah, says, a person that has done one mitzvah is orchestrated and assisted by heaven to do another one in order that he should be rewarded for both. Otherwise known as mitzvah goreret mitzvah. But the reward for you doing one mitzvah is that the next time it'll be easier for you to do the next mitzvah. The Alter Rebbe, however, takes an approach where no. The reward for the mitzvah, schar mitzvah. The reward for the mitzvah is the mitzvah itself that you are doing. The point of the mitzvah is not it's not a means towards an end, it is the end itself. Following in line with his theory that he's told us till today, which is that the purpose of creation lies in that mitzvah, in the one act that you do. Right? I think this ties very much into the whole general topic that we're trying to discuss over these three weeks, which is the power of action. And just to give one more teaser of something that's going to become clear over the course of today's lesson, is why it is there's two things the Chabadniks seem to be obsessed with, and they're very much tied together. One of them is Moshiach, as we just talked about. The other one is actually a mitzvah. For some reason, Chabadniks have this approach that I don't need you to become religious. I just put on tefillin with me. Just light Shabbos candles for me. Just make a bracha. Just whatever. Just come to a seder. Just eat matzah. Listen to Megillah. Whatever it is. And these two things are directly connected to each other. You see, because if we dissect what happens when we do a mitzvah, what happens is as follows. Let's take tefillin. Right? We put on tefillin. The tefillin goes on our arm. And by us putting the tefillin on our arm, we connect to a particular, look at it like some sort of, Da Vinci Code or something. Mm-hmm. We connect to a particular energy, godly energy, which we bring down into the world. And by particular energy, we mean the Ein Sof, the unlimited light of God, but a particular sort of version of it, or a particular ray of it that comes down for this particular mitzvah. And it surrounds the person. But much more important than surrounding the person, it affects the world. Right? So the person's arm gets affected, because he's doing the mitzvah with his arm. The tefillin itself get affected. This hide, which we spoke about last week, right? That there were people before Matan Torah, there were people before the Torah was given at Sinai who would do mitzvot, and they would bring down the energy, but there would be no physical manifestation of it, right? When we do a mitzvah, there is a physical manifestation inside the actual object. And also we bring about more light into the world, into the physical world. So essentially, what has happened is as follows. We've learned already earlier in Tanya, and I'll just recap it quickly for those who forgot, all the way at the beginning. But the fact that there are three things three categories that something can fall under. Either it's in Shalosh Kelipot Atmeot, the three completely impure Kelipot, so for example, let's give examples here. Eating pig, the act of eating pork, eating pig, right, goes under that category. For a Jew. For a non-Jew, anything that a non-Jew is not supposed to be doing falls under that category. And that's Shalosh Kelipot Atmeot, which means that it cannot be uplifted. It cannot be, you can't say, I want to make that holy. Right? Then we have things that are inherently holy. The act of putting on tefillin is holy. And then we have things that are from Kelipas Nogah, which means they're from this middle ground, this neutral ground, and it depends on us which way we take it. And that's our main purpose in this world. Not to try to uplift the three Kelipot Atmeot. We're told actually the way we refine them is by not doing them. Prohibitions, things that Hashem tells us we cannot do. The way we uplift that thing is by not doing it. That's its role in this world, is that it should not be done. Kelipas Nogah, however, everything else falls under this category. So any item which we take for a mitzvah, which could be used for anything else, where does it get its energy from before we do the mitzvah? Kelipas Nogah. It's completely neutral. The moment we take it and we say, I'm going to do a mitzvah with this, we've now transformed that object to be getting its energy or drawing down an energy of Kedusha, of holiness.
It's been given purpose.
Connected with God. Given purpose. Whichever word you'd like to use. Two examples the Alter Rebbe gives, and he gives very unique examples, very interesting examples. Because I give an example of tefillin because that's simple. The Alter Rebbe says, an etrog, which is not orla. Mm-hmm. Right, so Orla is that the first 3 years of the land in the land of Israel, the first 3 years of a tree giving fruit, you're not supposed to eat from the fruit, right? And then in the 4th year, it was taken to Jerusalem. A whole process. So an etrog, which is not one of those, gets his energy from Kelipas Nogah. In other words, it's available. Mm. Its status on Facebook changed from locked in Shalosh Kelipot Atmeot to available, and now you can use it to do a mitzvah with it and uplift it and elevate it. If it is from Orla, then now it's not available to be elevated. It's from Shalosh Kelipot Atmeot. In other words, the energies are constantly shifting. And our job is to shift them in the direction of Kedusha, to connect more things to holiness. Another example. When we give tzedakah with monies that are not stolen. When you steal money, not you, when someone steals money, that money is locked in shalosh klipot hatmeot, in the 3 impure klipot. In other words, it's locked in impurity. It's locked in negative energy. As a result, you cannot do a mitzvah with it. There's a famous rule in the Talmud that you cannot do a mitzvah with something which is with a dvar avera, which is used for a prohibition, for a transgression, to transgress the will of Hashem. So shalosh kelipas hatmeos are unavailable for elevation, but Kelipas Nogah, which makes up the most of all the things that we do in this world, and the objects that there are in this world, right, are available for us to uplift them. And I want to point out that every mitzvah that we do really involves physical activity. Of course, we just spoke about things that involve a physical object, right? An etrog, money, etc., right? We also spoke about something that involves a physical limb of ours, like tefillin, right? Or a physical action, shaking the etrog, giving the tzedakah, etc. But even those things that don't, right? So, for instance, speaking, words of prayer, Torah study, what we're doing right now, involves primarily our intellect, and on a very small level, our lips. So actually the Talmud tells us that hirhur eino maisa, but dibur have maisa. That thinking about something is not considered a physical action, but moving your lips actually is an action. Which is why we're told that the bodily movement that we involve in speaking words of Torah or prayer, if we do them with more emotion, now you'll know why I'm always raising my voice during the class and getting involved. When we do things with more emotion and more enthusiasm, etc., the mitzvah actually becomes more powerful. Why? Because we're elevating it in more of a direct way. We're doing that physical act in more of a direct way.
It's interesting because in psychology, when you have make a connection between a physical action and a thought, it becomes much more embedded in the synaptic connections in the brain.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, which energies are we talking about here? Right? When we're talking about a person's actions, where is that energy coming from? So I will refer you back, if you don't remember, I encourage you after this class to do so, to chapter 1 of Tanya. In chapter 1 of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe tells us, where is the residence of the animal soul? The Alter Rebbe doesn't say it's in some negative dark space and it comes into our body somehow and affects. No, the animal soul is in us. But where in us is it? Says the Alter Rebbe, it's damu b'sarek, it's in your flesh and blood. In other words, the energy that you invest into speaking words of Torah, into thinking, into putting on tefillin, into shaking an etrog, into giving tzedakah, that energy essentially is animal soul energy. It's your physical energy. And when you take it and you use it to do something holy, you've now converted that energy to be something holy. You've converted that, you've elevated that energy to be connected to holiness instead of the Kelipas Nogah. And this is the purpose of creation. Every time we do that, we've done what we're supposed to be doing in this world a drop more. We're not supposed to be a tzaddik. We're supposed to do this many, many times over. Otherwise known as the Beinoni. We're supposed to win the battle every time, not get rid of our evil inclination. And the Alter Rebbe is not telling you should be a Rasha. No. The ultimate level you should reach is a Beinoni. Why not a tzaddik? Because if you reach a tzaddik, you can't elevate this world anymore. A tzaddik has his own role in this world to help us, to do to do certain things in the world. But the tzaddik is not winning battles. The tzaddik is not affirming God's reality in this world. For us, what we want to be is a Beinoni, over and over and over again, without stop. In other words, the Beinoni's, what do we say? The Beinoni's battle never stops.
So a good Benoni will eventually be tzaddik?
No, not in this lens. First of all, the Alter Rebbe already explained to us that you need something else in order to be a tzaddik, unless you were born to be a tzaddik.
Okay.
Not a conversation for now. But think about how beautiful that is. That means that any physical energy that we have inside of us, right? So I just sat here right now and I took a swig of water. Right? I created energy. Right? Scientifically. I was just at the Hanoka's house, we ate dinner. Right? chicken, rice, this, whatever it was. I have now created energy. I've taken physical Kelipas Nogah food, which is not necessarily holy or unholy, right? Now, it was Kelipas Nogah, in other words, the chicken was kosher, the rice was kosher, whatever, it was available to be elevated, but I ingested it inside of me and I created energy, and now, right now, in this moment, I'm fulfilling the purpose of that energy. Why? By using the energy that I've created by eating and digesting something and using that energy to do something positive. When I go and I do something, when somebody goes and does something negative, they've defied the purpose of that, and indeed that chicken is upset at him now. It is. Because it doesn't have the ability to be elevated to holiness on its own. Yeah. I think I've shared before here the story of Hirschel Chernigover, who was called that because he was the rabbi in a city called Chernigov, and his name was Hirsch or Tzvi, David Tzvi Chaim. He was the rabbi there. This is 200 years ago. And one of the main purposes of a rabbi 200 years ago was to sit in a room and have women bring in chickens and say, "Oh, I did this, I did that. Is it kosher? Is it not kosher?" Right? They were cooking in their kitchens. They were salting it, and it worked. And one particular woman came in, and I don't know if it was the end of the day or whatever, and he needed to push her off to the next day. And she said, "Rabbi, don't worry. Maybe it happened more than one day, 2 days in a row." She said, "Rabbi, don't worry. I'm not a poor woman. I'll go get another chicken. No big deal. What's a big deal?" You know what I mean? Like he didn't seem certain. He needed to look it up. He said, "Come back tomorrow." And she was like, I don't need this. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just throw it out. I'll get a new one. You know. And she was saying it out of extreme sincerity. Chatz v'shalom, heaven forbid, I don't want to eat something that's treif. So the rabbi looked at her and said, "That's what you say. But what did this chicken say?" Seriously. This chicken has been waiting since literally the 6 days of creation. In other words, the potential to create it, and then it actually came down into this world, and now it was actually shechted, and the chita came out kosher, and now you salted it, and because you can't be bothered to take a little more time to figure out whether it's kosher or not, its whole purpose might have to start again. Reboot. Right? Whereas if we find out that it's kosher, and then you can eat it, and then you can do a mitzvah with that energy, you brought in an unbelievable sense of purpose.
I like this. This is cute.
It's not cute. It's practical. It's what we do on a day-to-day basis.
But for the chicken.
Oh, with the chicken.
Don't want to insult the chicken.
Seriously, by the way.
Yeah.
Seriously. And by the way, this doesn't just apply to animals. It applies to growing things as well. And it applies to inanimate objects as well. In other words, what's the purpose of this table? What's the purpose of this chair?
To put your book
The best thing it could have is that we should be learning Torah through it, that we should be doing a mitzvah through it. Can you imagine this table is used on Shabbos by Mincha? They actually put a Sefer Torah on it. Can you imagine how special the table feels? Not that the table has conscious feeling, but the godly energy which is bringing it life, because otherwise it would cease to exist, right, is feeling ultimately fulfilled. Right? In other words, it's all part of that master plan. Yes. Now, so here we get back to the Moshiach point. So what are the effects of all this elevation that's going on? The effects of all this Kelipas Nogah elevations. We're in section 4 now. When God created the world, God embedded in the entire world lots of these Kelipas Nogah sparks all over the world. Right? These little things that have Kelipas Nogah, and they're all supposed to be elevated, etc. And many of them found their way into our lives, our bodies, our animal souls, etc. And the purpose of the neshama coming down into this world, and it's, as we know, it's brought down kicking and screaming, right? And the neshama comes down into this world, it doesn't want to come down. Hashem says, but I need you to go down into a body and enclose yourself in a body and elevate those sparks. I put those sparks inside the body for you, that energy inside the body for you to uplift it. And that's what we mean when we say that we're fulfilling our purpose. You see, at Sinai, there were 600, at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, when God gave us the Torah, there were 600,000 souls present. And they were enclosed in bodies. And ever since then, those 600,000 souls, which many of you may have heard before, get divided up, right? They get divvied up. In other words, one soul could end up, right? Like in today's day and age, there are millions of Jews, right? So where are those 600,000 souls? I have a little part, and there's somebody in Argentina who has another quarter of it, and another third of it, or whatever, right? In other words, the soul, these are sort of master souls that then get divided. And our job as guardians of these souls in our lives, of me, you, every single one of us, is to do two things. Number one, stay away from the 365 negative commandments. Why? Because when we do that, when someone connects to the Shalosh Klippos Atmeos, you allow them to feed off of it. And when they do that negative thing, now they've taken the Kelipas Nogah energy they have in their bodies and they've lowered it. So we want to avoid that at all costs. And number two, probably more important, is to connect those Kelipas Nogah energies to Kedusha, to holiness. How often? Anybody?
Continuous graces.
As often as possible.
Continuous graces.
How often should you be a Beinoni? As often as possible. Anybody remember this from the early chapters, from like the first 15, 20 chapters? Right? What does it take to be a Beinoni? Right? Right now, I speak for myself, I'm on the level of a Rasha. What does it mean to be a Beinoni? It means that at every moment you're winning the war. So are there moments that I'm a Beinoni? Yes. But to be a real, proper Beinoni, the ultimate purpose of my life would be fulfilled if what? Not if I became a tzaddik. Not if I got rid of my inherent desire to do evil. No. If at every moment I was connecting those Kelipas Nogah energies, whatever they are, right now I have energies, right? It's even possible right now at this moment, while I'm doing this, I'm also doing something else under the table, or I'm also using energies for something else. That's negative. No. A Beinoni at every moment is using all of his energies to do something positive in this world. In other words, to do one of the 248 positive commandments, one of the mitzvot. In other words, to bring this world godly, And yes, when all souls will be elevated in their completion, all 600,000 of them, because the Jewish people were the purpose of creation, as Hashem says right in the beginning of the Torah, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, Bereshit, right, the word Bereshit, Rashi says right away, Bishvil ha'Torah shenikras reishis, Bishvil Yisrael shenikraim reishis. The world was created for the Jewish people and the Torah. In other words, for the Jewish people to do the Torah. So when the Jewish people will actually uplift the entire world, then the actual physical world will follow, and then the time of Moshiach will come.
I have a problem that.
Go ahead.
600,000.
Okay.
Because there was 600,000 men that were brought out. What about the women? What about their souls?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Is it 600?
If you ask me the question, if you ask me the question off the top of my head, my understanding always was that not my wife and I don't have two separate souls. I mean, the way I was taught is that a man and woman have two halves of a soul, and I guess the way that works is it's not even really two halves. It's like an eighth and an eighth, and then they meet because there's other, right? The 600,000 are divided, so we have two halves, and that's really one soul. So I guess at Matan Torah they were completely in sync with that. In other words, that soul was the man and woman together. They were married to each other. Does that make sense? Right. I still don't understand exactly how that worked. But were they all married? I don't know all the answers to all these questions.
Yeah.
But on a general level, I guess that's an answer just off the cuff.
It's a relatively good answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I don't think that there's ultimately a perfect answer for that in our life.
I don't know that we really understand it.
Yeah.
I don't know that we really understand what it means there were 600,000 souls. To be honest,
Yeah.
I don't know that the number was actually 600,000 when they got to Mount Sinai. It was 600. When were they counted? They were counted after Mount Sinai, and meaning in between when they were counted and when nobody died and nobody was born, and 600,000 people, nobody should be born.
Mount Sinai.
Right.
Those not dead.
Right, but between then and when they counted them,
Yeah.
well, they were counted before also. Whatever. I'm just saying, there's lots of questions that I have. I don't fully understand exactly how that worked. One thing we know for sure.
Soul and they divided, but it was all.
Well, yeah. One thing we know for sure.
Makes sense.
Is that, and by the way, and you're not even asking questions about children, right? What's about children? Children also have a soul, but they were under Bar Mitzvah, so how did their soul work? There's lots of questions here. One thing we know for sure is that Kabbalistically we're told that the souls of every Jew that exists in today's age existed then. And the explanation behind that is that there were 600,000 master souls that were there that accepted the Torah, and we all come from those. So it's very possible that the number of Jews that were there wasn't even exactly 600,000. Maybe it was less, maybe it was more. I don't know, but I'm just giving, I guess, a little bit more insight to further the conversation instead of it being just like, oh, that was only men.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how that works. Now, so it turns out that the time of Moshiach coming about and this whole beautiful, ecstatic frame of mind is directly connected to what we do in today's day and age. Every single soul is an offshoot of one of those 600,000. And every single one of those offshoots, in other words, every single spark has a purpose in this world with its body, even though the soul was forced down here and we're told that that's Yerida Me'or Panav Yisbarach. In other words, it was a downgrade for the soul to come down into this world. The purpose of it is, you were assigned a body, you were assigned an animal soul, uplift it. elevate it, connect it to godliness and to kedusha. You don't have the power to do that, but a mitzvah has the power to do that. This is why, by the way, we find that out of all the mitzvot, our sages talk about tzedakah above them all. A few things. We're told tzedakah, shkula keneged kol mitzvot. It's equal in weight, like in importance to all the other mitzvot combined. We're told gedola tzedakah shemekarevet et hageula. Tzedakah brings the redemption closer more than any other mitzvah. And now the question becomes, I don't understand. I thought we just explained the process and the way this works is that every mitzvah elevates certain energies. So then every mitzvah is bringing Moshiach closer. Why is tzedakah so special? Why is tzedakah over every single mitzvah? If the point of the mitzvah is to be the act that elevates some sort of Kelipas Nogah energy up to God, right, up to godliness and connects it to holiness, so why is tzedakah any different? And so to this, the Alter Rebbe actually points out that there are two things that are uniquely different about tzedakah. And they approach tzedakah from two different angles. Number one is the energy with which we give tzedakah is unique. Think about it. Not the amount of power that it takes for you to put the coin into the box, or even if, let's say, you invested some more energy. I don't know. You volunteered at a soup bank, and maybe you even worked very hard a whole day. That's not what we mean, because even that is all superficial energy. What is money? What is money?
Energy.
What is sustenance? Much more than that. Money is something that we have worked for. We've invested of ourselves, our time, our effort. Most of us spend the bulk of our days, unfortunately in today's day and age, making money. That's what we do. The bulk of our time each day, and the bulk of the days of our lives, we spend it making money. It's investment of tremendous amount of energy. Now, sometimes we take that money, which is a symbol of all of our energy, right? It's the product of all of that energy we put in. And what do we do with it? We buy food. We use that food. We do a mitzvah with it. Great. But then you can take it and you can do the ultimate. Make it not about you. Get out of your ego. Give it to someone else. And when you do that, essentially what you've done is you're taking this deep core energy that you have within you. In other words, something that you literally worked blood, sweat, and tears for, and you know, we all know what goes on in the business world, right? We know how hard people work, and maybe you sat inside a boardroom meeting, you argued for your salary over, and then you worked very hard to prove yourself and to make sure that, and then you got a bonus, and all these different things, and how hard we work to make money, and you take all that energy and you said, this is for you because you don't have. That's such a powerful elevation for that energy. Essentially, what you've done is you've taken a very deep part of your energy and connected it to holiness, as opposed to using that energy and buying other things with it.
Way, yeah.
I mean, not even selfish. Sometimes it could be used for negative things, right? And number two, says the Alter Rebbe, even if it's not, right? Let's say somebody didn't work so hard on his money. Some people in this world, it happens. I know, not to the best of my knowledge, not to anybody in this room. They inherit a huge inheritance, whatever, right? They're born into money. Maybe the guy didn't even die, right? Maybe the dad didn't even die, but they're born into this tremendously rich, and money has absolutely no value to them. But the fact of the matter is that money is inherently connected to our life force, our life energy. You see, because even the richest man in the world, he needs to spend money, even if that money is not worth that much to him, he needs to spend money in order to get himself life force. So every time he gives someone else money, he's giving away his own energy. He's giving away money which potentially could have bought him food, could have bought him shelter, could have bought him drink, whatever it is. And that's a very powerful move. So yes, while tzedakah is one of many mitzvahs, but it's almost to a certain degree the ultimate of all those mitzvahs. And that's why it brings Moshiach the closest. Because the more tzedakah we give, right, that's why we try to make a habit of every day giving tzedakah. That's why we try to make a habit of giving tzedakah as often as possible, as much as we can. Right? Because the more we do it, the more of that energy we're giving away. And I would even venture to say, by the way, that the harder it is for you to give it away, and you do give it away anyways, does that make sense? The more elevated it is, because the more of your energy you're giving away. Mm-hmm. The fundraiser is coming at the end of the class.
You take an IOU.
One of the problems with that is that there's another thing that our sages tell us equal to all the mitzvot, and we actually say it every single day in the morning prayers. In the preliminary morning prayers, we quote a Mishnah in Tractate Avot, in Tractate Peah. What was that?
Reading the halachas. Studying halachas.
V'talmud Torah keneged kulam.
Yeah.
Right in the morning, in brachot, at the end of brachot, we say v'talmud Torah keneged kulam. Right, that studying Torah is equal to all of them. Now, this is a very tricky thing, and we're going to deal with that in section 8. But right now in section 7, well, it's a tricky thing because there's a big discussion in the Talmud back and forth about what's more important, Torah or mitzvot, and we'll get to that soon. But firstly, what is so powerful about learning Torah? What's so powerful about learning Torah is three things. Number one, it elevates our garments, which is a very hard thing to do. Particularly the inner garments. Right? Normally we elevate action. That's usually what we do throughout the day. Thought and speech are much harder to elevate. When we learn Torah, we elevate those, the ones of the animal soul. In other words, we use the same mind and the same words that the animal soul would use to do something, right? To do something terrible, or even just something selfish, like you say, just to survive. And we use those to study Torah. And so we elevate our inner garments, thought and speech. I believe I made a mistake here. I just want to double check that. We're in section 8 here. 1 second. Yeah. On the handout, in number 7, in bullet point number 2, I wrote that it elevates the inner garments of speech and action of the animal soul. Speech and action are actually the outer garments. We're talking about thought and speech here because those are the more inner garments. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Number 2, and this is troubling for many reasons that the Alter Rebbe writes this, because we're not entirely sure how this works with other parts of Tanya. But essentially, the Alter Rebbe says that we can never transform, as a Beinoni, we can never transform the drive, in other words, the actual Nefesh Bahamut himself, the actual animal soul himself. But here the Alter Rebbe says that through Torah study, we can transform at least the Chachma Bina Dat, the Chabad, the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge part of the animal soul. And we can actually elevate that to holiness. And that's another thing that's very, very unique about Torah study. And number 3 is that the quality of light, that's drawn down, is literally higher than mitzvot. Think about that on a very simple level. Here he explains it here at length. Well, not at length, but think about a person, right? Even just a human being. Let's say we talk about when I do something. The power that there is in my mind, the power that there is in the rest of my limbs, can they be compared? Perhaps the power in the rest of my limbs are more in quantity, but the quality of energy that I have in my mind is way higher, right? Nobody's going to say the same energy that you have in your mind, the same energy you have in your hand. No. This can be used maximum to touch, to feel, to slap, to bang, to clap, whatever. And the power of your mind is way more powerful. So the mitzvot, which are compared to Ramachi Varin de Malka, the 248 limbs of God, are a very powerful light, and perhaps all of them together are more powerful than Torah. We're going to talk about that in section 8. But the quality of light that comes down, the quality of energy that comes down when we study Torah and that consumes us is a much deeper level of Hashem. Just as when you can connect to somebody mentally, it's much, much deeper than when you can connect to somebody physically. Right? Mm-hmm. As we discussed in relationship between spouses, you get me. When you get me, that's a much deeper connection than, I give you a hug. So let's tackle this differentiation between Torah and mitzvot. So the Mishnah in Tractate Avos, which is in section number 8 here, says that the most important thing is not study but practical observance. The Mishnah over there goes so far as to say, I think it's the Mishnah over there, if not it's a different Mishnah, so far as to say that Gadol Talmud, that even the greatness that study of Torah has, is all only Shemei B'Lidei Ma'aseh. Because what is Torah study all about? The point of Torah study is in order we should know how to do the mitzvot. Right? Now this is pretty obvious. This is because, meaning this should come as very well understood based on everything we've been discussing today. Why? Because if every mitzvah builds a home for God, and the whole point of the Torah is just to teach us how to do that, then that's much more important. But says the Alter Rebbe, yes, that's true, but that's only in terms of practicality. In other words, if there's another practical way, there's a caveat to that. A mitzvah always overrides Torah study, unless that mitzvah can be done by someone else. If that mitzvah can be done by someone else, then the person who's studying Torah should not distract their Torah study in order to do that mitzvah. Why is that? That's because when you study Torah, essentially you're in the process of basking in a very, very intense spiritual energy. A spiritual energy, or a godly light, which is literally Hashem's Chachma Bina Dat. You're connected with Hashem on an intellectual level, which is a very, very deep connection. That shouldn't be distracted just for doing a mitzvah, which is a very superficial and physical act. Now, the reason why we do is because the whole purpose of creation is to create the home down here through those physical acts. But if that mitzvah can be done through somebody else, the person who's studying Torah shouldn't stop. So that's a little bit of insight into the Torah versus mitzvahs battle. There's a lot more to stay on it. Mm-hmm. Torah is so powerful in that way that actually the divine light which is brought down, the energy which is brought down when a person actually studies Torah is actually called Kriya, which means calling. Why? Because both times you're calling. When you study Torah, you're calling. When you pray, you're calling, whatever it is. But when you call through the study of Torah, it's like a person who calls to his dear friend, or a child who calls out to his father when he's very close to him, or wants to be close to him, has this very close feeling to him. Whereas when one prays, it's as if we're calling out to Hashem at a distress, which is not as close of a feeling. Certainly it comes from a closeness, that's why we feel like we call to Hashem, right? It's like the words of the Zohar, I think, are Keshayelet Soek Abba Abba. When a child calls, Father, Father, help me. So there's a certain closeness there, but it's not the same as by Torah study, which is essentially when two very close friends, or when a father and son, but in a moment of closeness, he calls his father's name. And that's the powerful, powerful feeling of the powerful divine light and the powerful divine fusion that we have when we study Torah. So to summarize, I think one of the most important things we walk away with from today is how important it is every single mitzvah that we do. The next time that we think about it, and it's like, that's such a big deal. I'm doing the mitzvah. It's just this little detail I'm not doing. I'm not doing it perfectly. I'm not exactly. Translate those words in your head. Right? My soul came down here. It didn't want to. It was forced down here into my body, into my animal soul. Why? For this moment. And I don't want to do this mitzvah because I'm lazy. Right? But this is the purpose of creation. It gives a whole new weight to what the Rambam Maimonides says in Hilchot Tshuva. He says, "La'olam yira'at adam atzmo shakol v'chol ha'olam kulo shakol." A person should always see himself, his own life, and the entire world as a balanced scale. Right? And if we do one more mitzvah, it tips the entire world for the good. Right?
We are the grain that will tilt the scale.
We are the what?
Everyone is the
grain. The grain that will tip the scale. Exactly. Our one last mitzvah will do that. Right? And as Chabadniks, we walk around quoting this, and people look at us like, "Oh, you naive little, silly little beings," right? I feel so bad. Like you really think that with the one time putting on tefillin with somebody, you're going to bring Moshiach. My friends, it's true. It's true.
So how much?
It's not about the one little thing. It's about the fact that every single time we do a mitzvah, every single time we study Torah, every single time, what we're essentially doing is we're elevating physical energy.
So how much Torah should we study?
As much as we can. I know you didn't want that answer, because it's a very hard goal to strive for. But essentially that's what the Beinoni is. Trying to be a Beinoni is doing as much as we can. Winning the battle as often as we can. You know when you'll be called a Beinoni? What did Rabbah say? Rabbah said, Kegona na Beinoni, for example, I am a Beinoni. And his students couldn't believe it. They're like, for sure you're a tzaddik. Why was he a Beinoni? Because at every moment he was winning the battle. The Gemara says, his mouth never stopped uttering Torah, and he was the ultimate Beinoni. Certainly none of us here are an ultimate Beinoni yet. Hopefully there are many times that we achieve that level of Beinoni, and hopefully more and more times in our lives. And it's a lifelong journey to do what? To try as often as possible to be a Beinoni. Yes, study Torah as much as you can. Do as many mitzvahs as you can. You know why? Because every single one of those uplifts the world just a little bit, elevates the world just a little bit. And together, all of them together, with that last one, we're going to have elevated the entire world, and then Mashiach will come. The rest will fall into place. Like we said, we just need to do our job. Hashem will take care of the rest of the physical world reaching the era of Mashiach. And then will come a time when there won't be any elevation anymore. It won't be, this whole game will disappear. Why? Because Hashem will have achieved what He wanted, which was that intense pleasure of Dira La Yudbarach Batachtonim, having a dwelling place down here. Why? Because when Mashiach comes, that's what this world will be. It will be the ultimate dwelling place for Hashem. What do we say? Dira Lo, for Him, in other words, for His essence, right? Dira, a home, a place where that essence can be the way it actually is, but Batachtonim. That's the key, that's the caveat. Because the other two things He had before. But Batachtonim means here in this physical world, which seems to oppose God, we're actually going to be able to uplift that. And when Mashiach comes, we'll actually see that as a reality. May it be speedily in our days.
Amen.
And with this we conclude Jewish Mysticism Lessons in Tanya, chapter 37, Your Struggle is Worth It, part 3, and the end of our season 7, The Power of Action.